There are so many people that don't know anything about building other than one little area that they're in. Whether it's a steel detailer, a rebar detailer, a glass and glazing, they don't know anything about the other trades, and they don't care. They don't care. How hard is it early in the design to say, we're going to use this? This is what we're going to use. Any questions? Refer to this, because this is what we're going to use.
The can of worms opens again. But
it's not
and
that
you never
hard.
answered my project manager question at all. I got no advice out of you.
All right.
I got a tirade about superintendent.
Wasn't this the tirade episode?
Yeah, but that doesn't excuse not answering questions.
Well, let's start with learn how to build, learn how stuff actually goes together, pay attention to what the subs are telling you, and don't believe everything they say.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is a continuation of our conversation with our dad, Larry Campbell. This is part 2 of our sit down. This is part of a longer conversation that we had with him a couple weeks ago, and just hearing some of the different industry insights that he has to offer, having spent a lot of years in industry. And a lot of the things that you hear here on our podcast are kind of parroted from him. So we know that you're going to enjoy it. Let's get into part 2.
There's another side to this that we've experienced through the years, and I know you probably more than I have, is pushback from subs. One of the big reasons this isn't adopted is the detailing, whether it's rebar, glass, structural steel, doesn't matter. The shop drawing process is a weapon that a sub can use. The RFI is nothing more than a delay tactic on so many projects. And I mean, if you want to stop working on this job and work on another one that's more critical to you right now with what we do, what are you going to do? Throw a half a dozen RFIs at them and then sit back and wait so you can work on this other job. And I found so many times that seemed to be something that was being used against me as a project manager, but I've seen it from this side that is most definitely used. And we've run into projects where we did do the structural modeling and detailing during the design phase. And that was one where we did a bunch of projects that were very similar all around the country. And this GC was pretty much on board with doing this. And we're handing our shop drawings and erection drawings to steel fabricators who are used to controlling all this stuff. So now all of a sudden there's no more control in their part. And Eddie can speak to the pushback he got from a lot of different subs.
Yeah.
If they understood the process, I always called it the opportunistic sub. There were a few different sorts. Some would just kind of be like, well, that's not our standard. And then they'd kind of get over it, work with it. Others would understand it like any other sub-fab work that they ever took on, which happens all the time in the steel fabrication industry, is like people help each other out, your helper shop. And you understand, like, yeah, I'm using your drawings for better or worse. That's what I agreed to. But then there was that other guy that would be there kind of laying in wait, and they would use it. They would know, it was funny. There was one that we worked for, and I won't name him. Names will be protected here.
Redacted, yeah.
Yeah, but we were his detailer on a number of projects that we had done with him. And I just remember him yelling at the GC, you're dang detailer, talking about me. Now, I was his dang detailer on like probably 3 other projects at the time.
Right.
But he was your dang detailer on this other one. He just understood. He knew exactly. He said, "No, you set the game." And that gamey side of things that we're trying to game up and have the upper hand and keep them on their heels and all that can, I don't know, it just creates this adversarial relationship where you're looking out for number one. You're not acting like a team. You're not doing all the things we talked about in the last podcast where you've got this level of trust and you're all working together and you got each other's backs. And you know that on the whole of the year, the massive projects you're going to work together, like you're coming out good. You don't have that mentality. It's, man, I'm going to get mine. I'm going to get it on this one. And then if it's a burned bridge, well, that's one of 1,000. I'm going to keep moving.
No, I mean, that's across the board. Like that, like let's not just throw steel fabricators under the bus. Cause I mean, that was an example that like architects, engineers, like you've experienced that pushback as well.
I cannot sit here with any good consciousness and say that there's like a segment of the industry that this is completely absent from.
Yeah.
I think this has less to do with what you do and more to do with who you are. And, you know, if you're a teammate, if you're somebody that has, you know, a mindset of, I'm going to serve the project, I'm going to serve the people around me, I'm going to do the right thing, I'm going to come at this and I'm going to do it with excellence because I value excellence. I want to do it right. Well, then you're going to do that. But if you've got that get mine mentality, it can be leveraged if you're an architect or an engineer, a GC or a sub. It doesn't matter. Like that
or
different mindset or an owner.
The owner's the one that benefits.
You can do that to the people around you and you can act that way. And some choose to. Some set that bar. Owners. I mean, there are owners out there that set that bar for the project. There are owners out there that get the other end of that stick too, coming back at them.
Right.
So
we ran into that now we've done rebar, we've done structural steel. We're set up to do glass and glazing. And you remember this is now probably 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And we waited and waited and waited, and we were developing all of the different profiles from different manufacturers for glass and glazing for curtain walls. So, I mean, we're in Colliers, we're in YKK, we're in all of their catalogs, pulling all of their AutoCAD profiles out and then extruding them into Tekla. But even that was difficult because then this was up to, I want to say it was mid-2017 before Tekla could actually do the extrusion and do it right, because we'd have to take the AutoCAD drawing and dumb it down tremendously, taking out
it was the fillets, right?
Yeah,
it was the
fillets.
rounding and everything.
Yeah, Tekla could only take so many fillets to be able to do a true extrusion. Well, mid-2017, I get a call from a guy at Tekla saying, we have it. Download this latest version. So we did it. And man, we went to town on those things. And probably 3,000 profiles that we entered. We got called out to Trimble's office to demo what we had done. We had another guy in here doing coding to try to work out some of the details for the connections so that we could do all this profiling. And we had it down to where we could go in and do bona fide glass and glazing, shop drawings, in BIM, the way everybody now was wanting to see all this stuff come into their models, whether they were using Revit, Navisworks, it didn't matter. We could export into that with that glass and glazing. And guess where the bottleneck was? Every sub I went to, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. So now you go to a GC. My subs don't want to do that.
Which is who you're getting the product from.
Is it a lack of understanding? Like that has to be part of it.
There's a product problem. This happens in joists as well. So steel comes from a mill.
Right.
Very
predictable.
A joist is a designed element and can be designed differently depending on different joist companies. So SJI determines like basically the standards of a joist, but the manufacturer of the joist determines the economies and efficiencies and the engineering that they want to use to bring that to bear. Which means that if I go with one joist company, I might have a certain type of web members and cord members. And if I go with another, it might be different, right? All right. So detailing like we would steel, and then giving them a shop drawing of every joist that shows them exactly how to weld and put every panel point in. That might not be the same between two different joist subs. Now, take that problem. There aren't a ton of joist manufacturers out there. And we saw the bottleneck, kind of last year where that, that market got sapped all of a sudden.
Oh yeah. During COVID, it went crazy.
Yeah. Okay. So glass is like an even bigger problem. There are more companies. I mean, I remember getting calls from that same general contractor, design builder we worked with, talking about aluminum profiles they could get from China. They weren't Collier. They weren't Vistawall. They weren't YKK. They were a Chinese aluminum extruded profile. And like, well, what if we model, what do we do all of this stuff, and the system of parts changes? And we have to hot swap that. What happens to your shop drawings now? And also, if I go to a sub and they're like, hey, I can give you that curtain wall, a 7-ish inch system, and it works and it'll engineer to your wind loads and everything. Here's your number. And then I go to the other one that's, on the basis of design, and that number's much higher. I might be willing to take that VE or have an acceptable alternate. That problem becomes more complex because there's a product involved, and that product is kind of this, it's a system of parts. It's a kit of parts. And if I break it, now all of a sudden that subcontractor has like shop drawings that don't work anymore. And it can be swapped like that. I think there's programming that can be done in all of that, but we run in seams and we rely on a subcontractor to bring that to bear.
Well, see, now you're throwing a soft toss into me for a gripe session, because I don't see it that way. I see the problem with a lack of understanding of different aspects of your building. There are ways of getting around those things. Now, a joist company is a different kind of animal. The glass and glazing industry, there are so many profiles, and when you look at the big manufacturers, they have their details. And you can have connection details with their profiles, because with Conair and YKK, they had different shear lugs that went into their system. And we had those profiles that we had extruded into Tekla as well. And we were trying to work on a way where the model could be changed from one standard to another standard with kind of one sweep. And I think had we gotten more interest out of the industry, we would have come up with it, because we were well on our way. We had everything in there that we needed to do. The problem is that the subs, when they push back, the GCs don't know enough about that industry to say no. What I found is that there's nothing in this industry that's rocket science. Typically, everything that we do is pretty much understandable by somebody of average to above average intelligence. But we have people who don't want to go past, I just sub this out, to actually understand what it is that they're subbing out and how complex this is. You pick a profile, pick 3 or 4 different manufacturers and say, I need this much of this type profile. Yours will be this, yours will be that. And you know from the catalog what the quantity is. And then you let them price it out, and you can lock them into a purchase order as the owner or as a GC. You can lock them in. There's so many ways that you can offset all of that other time, because you've taken control of the process. And I think that's where mostly GCs, they don't want to take control of those processes because they're worried about the liability and they're worried about the pushback. But if if we're representing a GC like we have in the past, where we've done all the structural modeling and detailing for them, and pushback comes from a sub, hey, that sub's outnumbered just by us, because we know more about their job than they know about their job.
Yeah, the manufacturing processes could become a sticking point in those scenarios. We'd see the design builder had to know their stuff and be able to enunciate that. And buyout is a thing. All right. So we did duct work at one time, right? It's integrated in that building.
Yeah.
And the DB would they'd buy the equipment. Right. So they buy the equipment. They gutted this thing to where it was like they were buying the system and they just needed somebody to do the sheet metal. And that worked, but what could happen, what they found would happen is as they went from market to market, as you gutted the job, subcontractors didn't have anything to make money off of anymore. So they couldn't find bidder interest. And they had a hard time figuring out how to get the thing done going from market to market to market where they were relatively unknown. So that was a thing. And they had to express that well on the front end during bid. Like they had to make sure that they were telling people that. The manufacturing side, they had to make sure that they were telling people what they would get and what they wouldn't get. That they would understand that that the shop drawings were done. For one, that shop drawings are done. You don't need to worry with that. Don't include in your price. That we're just going to hand you complete shop drawings and say, go ahead, do it. Why are you waiting?
What do we call it?
What? Fab
what do
ship?
I call it?
Yeah, it was fab ship and shut up. And then it was fab ship, shut up and bill it. No TM on that one, but but I mean, it worked, but it took an expression of how it was going to work from the DB. But beyond that too, how is this going to work in your manufacturing process, in your fabrication process? So depending on the tooling you had and how you might job up, I remember a fabricator out west that they used pop marking on their channels to lay all their stairs out. So they wanted that. They even expressed that, but there was a failure to communicate between the DB, us, and that fabricator that ended up putting everybody in kind of a type of scenario. I'm this really uncomfortable. Who's doing this and who's paying for it? That it's always the scope's there now. Who owns it? Who's going to do it? And it was shop standards that mattered to that shop and bred efficiency in that shop, and that they would have normally had an understanding with their detailer to do. But that wasn't expressed and paid for by anybody, either for it not to be there and be programmed after the fact, or to be there and go be the extra mile that maybe we had to go to. So it takes communication. It took communication on these projects. And that was in the sheet metal, and that was in the steel, and that was in
the sheet metal mattered on at least one job in Tampa, where when we modeled they tried to make a change to a certain area of a building. And this is one of them that we had done over and over and over again around the country. But they tried to make a change to an area of the building, and the model that we had on the sheet metal that we coordinated with our steel, and this was in-house, we were doing both. I was able to get down there and just say, dudes, this isn't going to work. It's not going to work. So, and it wasn't even going to work from a structural standpoint. They couldn't reduce the beam size enough. So they ended up kind of stepping back and saying, okay, we're not making this change. And I think that,
I remember grease duct in kitchen areas. And, the slope, maintenance access for sillcock valves to release grease and take into account fire blanket and all these different things. The BIM process was effective in knowing the geometry side of things that we typically think of for BIM. It was very effective that way. Like we knew the geometry, we knew whether things fit, we knew structural collisions, we knew like constructability issues and things. But there's like another element that went beyond that we're expressing, which is like the implementation of that takes communicating and driving this into the subcontracting world. Like somebody's got to take it and do it. Somebody's got to bring that work to bear. The glass sub, panelized light gauge walls. We looked at that. We had bypass framing on the exterior of these buildings, and it's like, man, we could really do something cool here. But then that process, just opening that can of worms up. And it's like, it goes from high level, like how would we price it? How could we deliver it? How do we get this system of parts done or this kit of parts done? Then it goes down to like really little stuff like there's no such thing as a fastener without a hole in Tekla. So I can't have a fastener that's accounted for in Tekla without a hole in the day.
They fixed that.
But that got fixed, right? And so that it was like a little thing you never would have thought, oh, I want to encounter this.
Which that request came from us. Because we were working glass and glazing, there were certain parts that we wanted to be able to account for the screws in the model to be able to get a count on them. But when you put them into a standard part that was usually sent out there as just, a 20-foot stick that was being used, that those holes now would cause that to get a different piece mark. And we made the request that, hey, guys, this is making us look pretty stupid having 400 different piece marks for something that's just going to be sent out in stock lengths, but we want to track the bolts. So they ended up coming back, and it was a couple of years later.
Yeah, it got done.
Yeah, we have 2 or 3 other requests in there that Finland's dragging their feet on.
I still think field cuts would be a cool one.
Yeah, field cuts is another one. You cut something and it's not, and it's like you cut a hole in a panel, whether it's in a wall or in a floor, you cut a hole in the panel and it affects the number of that panel.
It takes the experimentation. It takes the boldness to go out there and try modeling these new things in order to make advancements in the software that can help us advance how we fabricate, how we build, right? Like you have to play. You literally just have to tinker.
To learn.
And break it.
Yeah, you got to tinker to learn.
To break it.
That's the thing, that the timidity that we have about doing the new thing and the like being kind of curmudgeonly, and I'm not, it's not going to be me. I'm not going to screw it up.
Right.
Like there's some other company out there that's got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And they're getting after it and they're willing to try the new thing.
What you're referring to as your risk is going to be your competitor's advantage.
Yeah.
One day it will.
Yeah. You'll end up doing it.
You will.
When you start losing jobs to somebody else who is.
Bingo. So you might as well be a little bit crazy and be just a little bit reckless.
Well, I'm going to have to throw out the one analogy that I like the most, that Eddie's, constantly gets on me because he's heard it a million times.
What?
That, BIM is nothing more than a tool.
Oh, yeah.
It's nothing more than a tool, but like a chainsaw. It's a great tool, but if you don't put it in the hands of a lumberjack, somebody's going to get hurt. BIM's the same thing. There are so many people that don't know anything about building other than one little area that they're in. Whether it's a steel detailer, a rebar detailer, a glass and glazing, they don't know anything about the other trades, and they don't care. They don't care because their customers over there say, just give me my drawings. Remember your thing on LinkedIn? Yeah, I just want my drawings. I don't care.
Yeah.
And they don't. But if the GC or the owner or somebody's driving this bus to where we're going to work all this stuff out during the design phase and simplify this, there's ways around all of these issues. Now, every job's different. There are going to be some times that maybe you're doing a job in, West Timbuktu, Utah, where you don't have any choice but to use certain subs. And those certain subs only use this manufacturer. Okay, well, that just means that when you model in detail, it's going to be in that manufacturer. That's a matter of communicating and knowing the area you're going to build in. But I think all of this stuff can be worked around, but it's got to be somebody who's willing to learn and who's willing to work the job, and they know what the heck they're doing.
You have to be super proactive to find those issues before they happen. So, I mean, if we're trying to figure out if we're using this product because this sub prefers this product for something, it takes a ton of proactivity. And like, I feel like where we're at right now, it's you kind of let the job happen. Mm-hmm. You hand it to a sub and you just kind of, you let things start flowing to you and then you start solving the problems as they come. Whereas this, it's, okay, no, we're going to run all the way over the mountain. We're going to look on the other side and say, what's going on over here? And most of the time we don't do that. And hey, we're busy. I get it. Like you got a taste of being, a PM on the road and a couple months ago. And now that takes a strain. There's a whole other level to this.
I got a question on that to that end.
Okay.
I have a question for you. You'd said early on in the show that your superintendents did the shop drawing review because he just flat didn't have time.
Yep.
And there are a lot of project managers that are out there like listening to us now. So I want you to speak to the guy that's like 30 some years old, 31, 32 years old, is a project manager and is under it like that. But I mean, they got a good heart. They want to innovate. They don't want to settle. They hear all this, but it's like, what would you tell them as somebody who was a project manager, somebody who's got this real hands-on experience? Like, what advice do you have for them on how do I break out of the fray? Like, how do I do this? Like, how do I actually take that kind of interest in every little last detail of my project and break out of this?
Well, let me clarify on the shop drawing process with the superintendents. That was not just a one-off job where I was so busy that I had to let the superintendents do the shop drawing review. I did that on all my jobs. The superintendent did the shop drawing review on all of my jobs. Wasn't my idea. Mm-hmm. Guess where it came from? Pop.
Yeah.
Because I asked him one time about shop drawing. He says, my superintendents do all the shop drawing review. And I mean, that was one of those, moments. And it made a whole lot of sense because if you think about the bell curves of busyness on a job, when's the PM the busiest? 2 different times, buyout and closeout. Mm-hmm. The middle part, he's cruising or buying out and closing out other jobs if he's got multiple jobs. The superintendent, when's he busiest? As the job gets going, as materials start arriving and stuff starts happening. Early on in the job, man, I'll tell you what, a lot of times the superintendent's out there and he's bored to death because he's watching a track hoe dig from here to there. He's watching pans, he's watching dozers, he's watching guys that are out there doing their thing. He doesn't have a whole lot going on at that time of the job. He's not spending a whole lot of time walking around checking things and, and that's a great time for that guy to be doing the shop drawing review if you can get it to him during that time. But, also design review, taking care of RFIs. Somebody made a comment on your LinkedIn thing the other day about he got offended because you said something about not coordinating or not,
Yeah, I think it was kind of the notion that this was the GC's fault or the GCs aren't coordinated, the GCs aren't doing their job. And it fell in his backyard on that one.
Yeah. Well, he said it rubbed him the wrong way.
It's somebody else next time, I can promise.
Yeah. I just basically said, go check how many open RFIs you have on your job and let those rub on you a little bit.
Yeah.
Because those are the things that are holding you up.
You guys better watch out because if you say something testy on our LinkedIn post, Dad will come after you. All right.
They told me the more comments they get, the better. So that means that y'all are fair game from now on. I'm going to help them out. Yeah, they're going to probably be deleting most of my comments.
We're going to get canceled. All right. Anyway.
I won't use any of the curse words.
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Well,
now here's a here's one. What is the number one thing that you guys have harped on over and over and over again from the steel detailing side that gets left out and becomes an emergency on every job?
On the count of three.
RTUs.
1, 2, 3, RTU frames.
RTU frames. Now, guess what? How hard is it early in the design to say, we're going to use this? This is what we're going to use. Any questions? Refer to this, because this is what we're going to use. Well, guess what? If you've done that and you've established up front that we're not giving you this choice of 4 different manufacturers, because, hey, we went ahead and we sent out a list of what we needed to 4 different manufacturers, and we got pricing from the 4.
Yep.
And the only fly in the ointment is if you can't buy from them, we may have to buy the units direct. But you've
that gets your rectangle.
That gets your rectangle.
That gets your rectangle. And now somebody's got to tell you where it goes, and then somebody's got to put that on a sheet.
Yeah, but see, that part's not that hard.
I've seen this done with repetitious builds. I've seen several companies that they do this. Like they have probably a national contract with a company. They'll get with Train or something. That's their unit. That's
well, they pay more. They pay more when they're doing national contracts. You're actually better off just bidding a job.
Yeah, I mean, so the can of worms opens again. But
it's not
and
that
you never
hard.
answered my project manager question at all. I got no advice out of you.
All right.
I got a tirade about superintendent.
Wasn't this the tirade episode?
Yeah, but that doesn't excuse not answering questions.
Called the airing of grievances. All right, get it right, guys. Consistency.
Well, let's start with learn how to build, learn how stuff actually goes together. Pay attention to what the subs are telling you, and don't believe everything they say. They're not rocket scientists. The best and brightest coming out of construction management schools, where do they go to work? I mean, I'm not dissing fabricators, but they don't go to work for steel fabricators. They go to work for the big GCs.
Well, I want to clarify too, like, don't believe everything. You're not talking about assume I got a liar on the other side. That might be a whole other rant, but you're talking about don't assume that their knowledge is so mystical that you can't figure it out.
Right. Or that they have the only right way of doing it.
Dig in for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You're the builder.
Yeah, pay attention to some of the details. Yeah, I know that early on the job is a busy time, but if you're a young PM coming up, you're not the one making all those calls anyway. You're mostly doing paperwork and following some senior person. Mm-hmm. So that's the time to start paying attention to what those subs are saying and talk to multiple subs. Hey, is this true? Is this how you do it? Well, no, we do it this way. Why? Well, because of this. Well, remember the story about why grandma always cut her turkey in half to put in the oven? Because her pot wasn't big enough. Well, you know, when one sub tells you we like doing it this way, well, his equipment may be suited or better suited for that. Mm-hmm. He may like bolted connections because he has a drill line over here. And it's hard for him to find welders. His welding can't keep up. So yeah, there are those things and those reasons that somebody will say, we prefer this. Well, okay. But you can go to 2 different people and they're going to give you reasons why their way is better. The fact is, it's better for them. And that's going to be true in every sub.
Yeah, I've seen and heard a lot of subcontractors throw down that phrase like, you know, I've been doing this for 30 years or 20 years or however many years sounds impressive.
My favorite line.
And I've never seen it done. I've never seen this in all of my, and it's not a tenable argument. Just because you haven't seen it and it's not normal to you doesn't mean that it couldn't be industry normal to somebody else. It's amazing what happens regionally in preferences. Mm-hmm. And you're right. I mean, just thinking because somebody says, oh no, that's stupid. Nobody does it that way, that you need to just automatically take that at face value. Even if it's somebody that you trust and know that they wouldn't lie to you.
that doesn't mean that they have all the answers, and there isn't somebody else over here that can do it right as well.
Yeah. Oh, I've had jobs where I've prescribed something in the way of connections, and I'm thinking, no, this is, hands down the better way to do it. And then the final and low bidder comes back and says, if you'd have done it this other way, I could have saved you $15,000. And you're like, okay.
Yeah, just wait. We'll do it.
Well, and the answer to that is, okay, well, let's work out the money and we'll fix it. But it's
most of the time there's no money attached. Oh, we would have saved money if we'd done it this way. Really?
Yeah,
How much?
It's like, is the suggestion there because you're willing to go ahead and drop another 15 off, or is the suggestion there because you're trying to look smart?
It's a pride thing.
And a lot of times it is a pride thing where I'm trying to look like the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah.
And
we see that.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, we're kind of competitive in the construction industry.
From every side. And that's not limited to subs. We've seen that attitude from everybody.
That's not limited to people outside of this room. That's definitely something
mildly
we struggle
competitive
with.
at this
Mildly
table.
competitive.
Hey, now let's go on record too that we are the reason there are a lot of GCs using Tekla today.
I don't know if we can actually prove that, but I can prove it for a few.
In our hearts and minds.
Yeah, there's a few, and there's a few of them that you can remember. One of the things that was kind of like the wow factor when Pop was with me. Well, we had some real wow factor going on back in the early days when we'd go out to a trailer and we had a projector and we'd project the model up on the wall and pray before we got there that Tekla didn't break down.
Well, shoot,
and sometimes our prayers were not answered too.
I remember doing that, and the soup coming over and looking at me like, oh my gosh, that's super cool. Oh man,
yeah.
he'd lose it. I'm like, that was 2014, I think, when I did
it's
that.
Nothing
Maybe
now.
We did a presentation for, was it DBIA? And it was like DBIA down in Tampa.
Yeah.
And Dad was supposed to have the talking points, and I was going to do like the whiz bang, dog and pony, show off the 3D model, like how fast I can do things. And we crashed the software 3 times. And talk about an eternity. And this isn't a new laptop. This thing, we were trying to reboot and fix and everything. And come to find out, it was just because we dropped the lid on the laptop and there was a bug with that. We had Tekla open trying to save some time. We'll just raise the lid and go. And that's what crashed it. We had no idea what was crashing us. But I also remember early on, it was after 1 year, that I had to go to a meeting that it was for the village at Deaton Creek. Mm-hmm. And we were doing that clubhouse and we had issues like geometry issues and you couldn't make the meeting. And I was about to pee my pants. I did not. I was like, I got to go down there. And I remember the old fabricator looking at me and, I showed up and it was like, you're it. You're my guy. You're my detailer guy. And it took all of about 10 minutes, man. Yeah, we put, this is a pretty high-end architect, downtown Atlanta, nice office and everything, and a pretty well thought of engineer. And this old curmudgeonly fabricator, and I get in there and it was 5 minutes of skepticism. And then as soon as that 3D model hit the screen, everybody was locked in building the job. Everybody was pointing at stuff. Well, you could fun. This, you could that, you could. The architect was immediately looking at, well, could I do this with the bird's mouth on that to make everything work out? Mm-hmm. And we're just trying to make the hip work out on a roof that they were using tube steel on and trying to make everything plane out for the deck. Everybody engaged. And it didn't matter that in that moment I was 25 years old and completely inexperienced. Just the 3D was it was the tool. It was the medium in the moment to be able to help people understand the problem. Oh, I see the issue now.
One of the fabricator's first question was, "Where's your dad?"
Yes, I believe it was. And I think I said something like, he sold me out or something.
I don't remember what it was.
I don't know, but I wish he was here right now. I just took this job so I didn't have to crawl under houses anymore. I didn't expect to have to leave
That is an
meetings.
intimidating thing when you're young and then you walk into a room full of experienced people.
I didn't even know how to get through the parking deck and into the architect's office in downtown Atlanta, let alone, do
Well, the cool thing was you had people who were builders in that room.
Yeah, they
and
took
that's
it
why
over.
they got excited.
They took it over.
One of the problems that I've seen over the years is that now finding people who are proficient supposedly in the software, there are a lot of people like that. But a lot of them, they're proficient in that software. They don't know how to build anything other than what that software will do.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to teach them. Nobody cares. So, but when you put them in the hands of some people who actually know how to build, all of a sudden you get excitement. Because, if you're in this business for any length of time and you don't like to build, you need to get out. And, the longer I've been in it, the more I just like to build. I don't like a lot of the politics that goes along with it. I don't like a lot of the BS. I hate the lying. When somebody lies to me, Eddie can tell you that's the end of me.
That didn't go well.
Oh, that won't go well.
That's where that comes
And
from.
it doesn't matter whether it's the GC lying to me or the fabricator or it doesn't matter.
It's genetics. I do the same thing. I just get really, really
It
irritated.
came from my mom.
I'm like, burn the ships. We're done. I don't care how much it costs.
Like you start lying to
You're
me.
done.
Oh yeah.
There's a vindictive side.
There's a very vindictive
The
side.
trust is out the window.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because you want to trust but verify.
Yeah,
right?
and even if it's something they're telling me what I want to hear, just because they want me to tell them what they want to hear.
Yeah. Gosh.
For young guys, just ask lots of questions of different. I mean, if you're focused on steel or concrete or rebar or precast, glass, roofing, it doesn't matter. Every one of those trades, there are a lot of different ways to accomplish a job. I mean, even something as simple as roofing. That's a whole lot more complicated than just go out there and unroll something.
Yeah.
And, learn those trades. It doesn't take that much. You're not gonna leak that knowledge. I mean, it's not like you're going to take it in and then you're going to forget it the next day. There's stuff that you may learn from one sub that's going to stick with you for the rest of your life. And it may not even be anything that you're going to see in your lifetime until 20 years down the road. And then something somebody said to you is going to come rolling back.
I'll tell you what, man, example of just industry knowledge. And I was working on a job, David Channel, give him a call, give him a shout out. RTU frames, Ms. RTU frames. And we're getting bogged down with where to put these things. We're like, oh gosh, we don't know where they go. So we can't really do anything yet. We can't really detail them. We can't really send them to the shop. And he just said, make a box out of angle and then get 2 legs that sit on the joist. And then you just drop that box down and move it around. We just need to figure out the opening size. That's it. And I had been detailing up until I was about 8 years in. I thought we would just be screwed because we couldn't figure it out. And then David's just like, no, just do this and this. I was like, holy crap, that's brilliant. And then I carried that with me from job to job to job. So asking questions, asking why, talking to the people that are around you. Like, why is the most powerful word in construction? Why?
Oh, yeah.
1,000%.
Oh, yeah.
Just why? Why? Like we talked about that the other day. Yeah. There's great money in just asking
questions.
Why? And it doesn't have to be mean. Like, that's not the intention. No. You don't have to be like, well, why? No, just teach me. Teach me something. I want to know what you know.
I had a file that I didn't send on a job the other day, an NC file that I didn't think was necessary because it was a bent plate. And I get a request for an NC file. And my first thought was, why? The request came from somebody that I don't particularly want to ask why, because I know it'll be because I said so. But, I'd like to know, hey, I'm under the assumption that particular file was not necessary for that particular profile.
Yeah.
So I left it out on purpose, not by accident. They need it? Okay, do they need it because they're trying to check a box that says, oh, yeah, we got an NC file on it? They won't use it, but it's there.
Or are they going to burn the plate out and then break it?
Yeah. Is that all part of it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It may very well be. And from one customer to the next, the answer is going to be different, because this fabricator may have all the equipment to do it a certain way. The next fabricator may be subbing out his plate work to somebody who does it a totally different way.
Right.
So it could be two different answers. I mean, I went ahead and created it. It didn't take any time to create it, send it to them, and be done with it.
Yeah.
But
at a certain point, it doesn't matter if it's a box check or not. Just, all right, sounds good.
And things have
you.
changed so
Whatever.
much. I can sit there and say, yeah, I'm coming up on 50 years in the business. Right. I'm still learning every day.
Yeah.
And I need to keep learning every day if I'm going to stick around.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, did we solve all the world's problems today? I think we did. Did we solve them? I think we just fixed construction.
I thought it was just
Maybe
airing
I
grievances.
figured out how I can sit for more than an hour without having to go to the bathroom.
Well,
but other
yeah,
than that,
I'm right there. So let's shut her down, guys. Dad, thanks for coming back.
no problem.